Well, here I am. I'm going to give it a try, see how I make out. And this is something I haven't done for a long time. It's kind of new to me. However, my name is Leslie Kinnell, first cousin to Doris, and Doris has asked me to give her a few highlights on the Kinnell family, and especially Sid, since way back when I remember. Now, first off, as I says, I should give you a little bit of introduction. You will hear names as we go along in this. Just for a moment, I'll have to pause. Yes, however, Doris's father was my Uncle Sid. And although we grew up in the same house at 31 Kensington Road in Ipswich, Suffolk, England, instead of being an uncle, he was more like a big brother. After all, there was only 10 years and a month between our ages. In my life, to me, he was my big brother, because no matter when I had a little difficulty or need a little help, he was there if I needed him. First, I should give you a little bit of an introduction as to the family names as we go along here. You might hear me mention these during this talk. We'll start off with, to me, my grandfather, Edgar Kinnell. As near as I can tell you, he was born around 1861. I've forgotten the year he passed away. Then there was Grandma, Janet, his wife. She passed away, I believe, on February the 11th in 1921. And I'm telling you, there was the start of my life right there when she was gone. She was a dear soul, very kind, not very strong. And from there we'll go to they had 4 sons of a family. The oldest was William, who was my father, and then there was Art and Bert, and then Sid. He was the baby of the family. As you might know, Bill, he enlisted in World War I in August, and he came home in October on Nelson Day, I think, which is October 21st, and buried his wife. In the meantime, this was before I remember too much, they had a servant or maid, whatever you want to call her. Her name was Emily Patrick. Well, she turned out, as I went along in life, she turned out to be my mother. And yet Bill is my father, so there you figured I went out. But that's me. In the meantime, sometime between 1914 and 1919, I couldn't say exactly, she got married and she carried on having family, which I am in contact with now. Actually, they are my half-brother and half-sister. I hear tell of them once in a while. We have a talk on the telephone a couple of times or so a year. But all I remember about the house where I was born in, which was down near the River Gitling someplace, I remember being in the high chair, and I used to throw my plate on the floor and break it after they'd feed me, but finally they got me an enamel one. That was the shape of an old-fashioned soup plate, and I had a rim around it with the alphabet on it, and a clock down in the bottom basin part. Well, they taught me from that to say the alphabet, A, B, C, and what have you. And when I started school, by the way, between Z and A there was a star. And when I started school, they teach me the alphabet. I would rhyme it off and say X, Y, Z star. And the teacher says, where do you get the star? There is no star. So that's how I started school, with the star between them. I don't remember too much more. I don't remember anything about that place. But I do remember my grandfather, Grandma. They took me after Bill went back to the war, I guess, as far as I know. And they raised me. And I lived with them. They were very kind to me. And I don't remember too much till I'd be either 5 or 6 years old. I know it was a Saturday and a lovely sunny day. My grandfather came home from work. Yeah, he had a nice brand new wheelbarrow for me. Nice painted green with a red wheel and red inside the box and a steel rim on the wheel. I really thought that was pretty nice. He says, here, he says, this is for you. I says, for me? Yeah. He says, this is your birthday. That's the first I ever remember having a birthday. But I thought it was pretty good. I got a lot of kick out of that wheelbarrow. And he used to have a garden there at the back of the house, and he'd grow potatoes in the summertime, cabbage in the wintertime. Because after a while I found out why the wheelbarrow. He'd send me down the street and follow the milk wagon and the bake wagon to gather up what the horse left behind. He'd put her on the garden to grow his vegetables. I didn't blame him. It was good thinking. I say, we lived at Ipswich, and of course the First War was on, and always it was a common thing to have an air raid. The Germans, we used to call them Fritzies. They would come over there in the night with their balloons and their airplanes, and of course naturally they were heading for London. One dropped some bombs onto London. Somehow or another they'd lose track and they'd mistake Ipswich, and Ipswich was bombed out in quite a few places. I know one night, for instance, just a block or two from where we lived, it destroyed every house in the block from dropping the bomb. Another night I remember looking out the bedroom window in the middle of the night. This was a common thing too, to see one of the Zeppelins. They used to fly these Zeppelins a lot in that war. They'd be coming down in flames, and that would be the end of them. Of course we'd all make for it the next day, see if we'd get a piece of it, but I used to get the odd piece. They made of aluminum, I think. They were quite shiny. I might say of the family of the Kinnells, of Edgar and Janet, there were 4 sons, there was no girls. There's a picture someplace, I don't know, Sid used to have it. Maybe Doris has it now, I don't know, I couldn't say. But there was a picture of the 4 of them in uniform, and they were postcard size, and they're very smart. But every one of them was in the war. And I remember my dad, Bill, he was in the Royal Marine Artillery, and his number was RMA 888. So he was one of the first ones in there. Well, as I say, us kids, we would get sent home from school with an air raid on, and the sirens would be going, and then when it's all over, they blow again, and we go back to school. But you know, our main thing as kids, we were scared of bombs. And Christmas time happened to roll around. Grandma put me to bed Christmas Eve, said, well, Santa Claus will be coming and all this stuff, you know all about it. And she laid a pillowcase on the chair beside my bed. And I says, he never fill all that. All I need to stocking. Oh yeah, he'll fill it. Because I was pretty well looked after at that time. I wake up in the morning and sure the pillowcase was full right to the top. I started unloading to see this, that, and the other. I couldn't tell you what all was in it now. But I got halfway down and here was this box about the size of a shoebox. And was it heavy? I was scared. Said, this has got to be a bomb. I'm not opening that. And of course, you know what kids are on Christmas morning. I entered the back room, my back bedroom there, and wakes it up. I says, hey, I won't undo this, you undo it, it's heavy. Oh, he says, come on, undo it. At any rate, we got it undone. And you wouldn't believe what was in that box. Well, it was a battleship. A model of a battleship, you know, a real thing. Had 3 smokestacks on it. And of course the smoke came out of one of them. Well, that was some kind of a metal key that you wound it up with. Had a clockwork motor in it. Had 2 propellers on behind. And it would go. You put it in the water and it would really go. Well, I never got to using it very much until one day it was pouring rain. My grandma used to go get bread every night, loaf of bread, around the corner. Sometimes she'd send me for it. But this day, I couldn't even go to school. It poured rain so hard it wasn't fit to go to school. And of course, she had to go get this bread. She didn't want to take me. It was too much rain, too heavy. So what did she do? She fills this great big kitchen sink. She didn't fill it, that's the problem. She put some water in it for me to play with this boat while she went and got the loaf of bread. Well, it wouldn't go in that little bit of water that she put in, and I decided, them days they used to have a great big cap made of brass, and just a bar across for a handle, you know. As soon as she got out of the house, says I'm going to have fun now, I'm going to turn this tap on. I got it turned on wide open, filled the sink till she ran over. A good job we had a slate floor and a back door, because the water was running out when she came home. I could not get that tap turned off. I never forget that day. She never said too much to me. She says, you made an awful mess. You shouldn't have done that. You should have known better. I left you water, yeah, but I turned it on. Wait till your grandfather comes home. That was worse than getting a licking. He never really, you know, he never really hurt me, but oh, that old hand of his hurt. He'd just take my pants down and let me have it. So that was that episode. Yeah, and another time on a Saturday afternoon, all the kids were going down to the ponds. They were about a half mile down from the end of the street. They were going to catch tadpoles, put them in jars and make frogs out of them. And they all went with me. So I opened the letterbox and I called the grandma. I says, can I go tadpoling? No, you can't go tadpoling. You might fall in and drown. Oh, they were gone. There I was all alone. So I says, no, I guess I'll go back and try again. I opened the letterbox, grandma. And I go to the park. And that was about a mile the opposite direction. Yeah, you can go to the park. Okay. You'll be home for supper, or for tea as I call it. Yeah. Well, I wasn't long. I found a jar and off I went with the rest of them, tadpole. But in the afternoon we had fun, caught tadpoles, come home, set the tadpoles out in the back garden there. And who walked in? She spotted them. Wait till your grandfather comes home. He come home, and I got it again. And I got it for lying. Well, I didn't think I lied, but I got it anyway. But the tadpoles never did grow into frogs. I don't know what happened then. However, that's it. Now I'm going to pause now, and I might have a little problem in this pausing business. But I'll get going again. I'm having quite a time. I got notes here, and I don't see very good. But I'm having quite a time. I'll get there. Okay for now. Yes, Grandma, she was very ill. Supposed to have pleurisy and I don't know what else. The last year that she lived, She was in the front room there. I don't think she ever left it. She never was out of bed that I know of, very much anyway. She was real invalid. But she would be there most of the day alone while I was at school and he was at work. And this went on till, I guess it was the 11th of February, 1921. I got up that morning and got ready for school, and I couldn't understand why all the stuff out of her bedroom, out of Grandma's bedroom, was in the kitchen there, in the scullery, in other words. And Grandma fed me my breakfast, and off I went to school. And I'll never forget that day. And I didn't catch on that anything was wrong. I just thought it was maybe clean house or something, or nothing to do with me. I went to school anyway, and we always used to meet in the big hall and have a prayer and sing a hymn, and then go to our classrooms. And when we got through with the prayer and the hymn, Donald Kinnell, my first cousin, he was Bert's boy, he was over here one time. Doris could explain it to you. At any rate, he come over and told me, he says, "So Grandma's dead, you know." Well, I'm telling you, that hit me like a bolt of lightning. I couldn't believe it. Well, at any rate, when I went home for my lunch at noon, Grandfather was there, and he fed me, and he took me in to see her, but this time she was in her coffin. And I guess she laid there for a week. For them days they kept me over there for a week, and she laid there for a week, and people came and seen her, and I guess I was at school. I didn't see too much. But the day of the funeral, both Don and I went to school just the same as ever, and that was it. So Grandpa and I was left there alone, and he was good to me, and he making out very well. And he told me one day, he said, "I don't think you better stay here," or something like that. "I don't think they'll let you stay here with me." And I don't know. However, in about a month or 6 weeks, Easter holidays was coming up, and we got out of school, you know what I mean. And he says, "You're going to Walthamstow for your Easter holidays." Yeah, all right. And he says, "I'm going to Hampstead Heath." But he says, "We'll go to Liverpool Street Station on the train," and he says, "There," he says, "you're going to meet Mrs. Bowman." As I already said, I didn't know at that time, but as my mother. At any rate, you're going to her place. Well, I went home with her, and I didn't think much of a place when I got there. I'm not used to this kind of life and living. And of course, they were on relief. They had nothing too much. And at any rate, I got a letter in the mail about 2 days after, or later, informing me that I was to stay there. I wasn't coming back to Ipswich no more. Oh, there was a broken heart right there. But I had to keep it pretty well to myself. However, Mr. Bowman, that she married, he was no use for me, and he used to beat me up for nothing. I put in, I guess, 3 years there, and that's when I really found out she was my mother. There was an undertaker's place just down the street, 3 or 4 doors, and there was all horses then. They used to have 2 horses on a hearse, and the same with the cabs for the funerals, and it was quite a sight to see them take off for a funeral. But at any rate, she was old and wasn't able to do her own shopping, so after school, or maybe in the evenings, I would go and do her shopping. She would send me on what we call our errands, you know, errands. And when I come home, she knew I wasn't getting too much to eat. She would always feed me and have something nice for me, and a cup of cocoa before I go home. Of course, I always got paid for doing these errands. Well, one night, one day I was having my bite eaten, and I have to say something about Ipswich, and I'd like to go back to it and all this, and my grandfather. And that's when she opened up and told me the whole story. she says, Mrs. Bowman is your mother. Okay. Well, I went to school there till 1924 before I could leave school. I often felt like running away, but where would I go and what would I do when I got there? But however, my mother, she picks up the news of the world, and of course I'd read it too. And here was an ad in there, they wanted boys to go to Canada. And they were going to train them on this farm down in Kent. Fegan's Homes, they call it. So at any rate, she got in touch with them, and we went down. I come out of school on the last day of September, and we went down there on the first day of October. And they had their consultation, and it was only a day or two before I went in there, and I was gone to the farm in Gowdish. Well, this old Frank Bowman, he used to say, we're going to put you on a farm, and I'm going to collect your wages. I had in my mind, you may put me on the farm, but you'll not get my wages. So I figured, well, if I went to Canada, he'd have a heck of a time getting my wages. He'd have to swim. It was a darn long swim. However, I got ahead of my story there a little bit. While I was at Walthamstow, Sid came to see me once. And I don't know just what year it was. It would probably be late in 1921 or early 22, because the first thing I know, he told me, he said, I'm going to Canada. Well, when this other deal come along for me to go to Canada, I was all for it. And he came out here to Canada in 1922. And I didn't hear tell him, well, he used to write me a letter once in a while, and I'd write to him. The same with Grandfather Ipswich, we used to write, but not often, but once in a while. But however, when I was old enough, I got in that home and I was on my way, getting ready for Canada. I was supposed to be in there for about a year and a half before I'd be big enough or know enough to go to Canada. But I put the winter in. I had a lot of trouble with my eye. They tried to straighten it, which was not successful in the hospital, but I spent as much time traveling up to London to the hospital, back and forth on the train and such like as I did pretty near working and learning. But however, when the time came around in March, they were getting ready to shape up who was going to Canada. And they had this meeting this night. Well, us boys, it was, I think, between 60 and 70 of us boys. And they were picking out who was going to Canada, who was going to stay. And I was quite surprised I was picked to go to Canada. Well, I thought I was pretty young, pretty small, but however, I come along with the crew. There was 44 of us came over on the boat, on the Montclair. I think Sid came over when he came over on the Montcalm. There was what they called the Three Sisters. There was the Montcalm, the Montclair, and the Regina. They were nice boats. It was the 30 or 33rd crossing of the Atlantic that we came over on. So it was a fairly new boat. It took about a week. We left Liverpool Friday night around supper time, say 5 or 6 o'clock, somewhere around there. We pulled into Quebec the following Friday, 10 o'clock at night. So we were 8 days, you might say, but we made pretty good time, had pretty good weather. And this thing is still going, I see, that's great. So, however, that's my story. I was here. Well, after I got to Toronto, we stayed at they had a home there just for staying overnight and such like on George Street, 295 George Street. Well, we stayed there. We landed in there on a Sunday morning. And I think we stayed there for about 3 days, and then they lined us up where we were going. Well, they had me labeled to go to Uxbridge, to McKnight's. Well, Sid and Doll came out there a few times and saw me, and They were very good. They were good people to me. There were three other boys there at Oxford. They didn't stay there very long. They went out west. But however, I got into a good place. McKnights were good to me. And I worked my way. And Sid used to come out there once in a while to see me. But I'm ahead of my story again. I was only at Uxbridge about, maybe a week or two, when, the train used to come through there twice a day from Toronto to, well, it actually went to Port Hope, I think, but it used to come through Uxbridge and Peterborough and what have you, Lindsay. However, one train would be going what I would call north or northeast, either one. That used to go through about 6:30, and it'd meet the other train in Blackwater. Well, the other train, it would come back, and it used to get in there, about, 7:30, 8:15. Well, however, he came out on that train to Uxbridge, and we walked up and down the street there till the other train come back, and we had quite a visit. I hadn't seen him since he left England. And he said then, we kept in touch fairly regular from then on. I used to go down and stay with him about twice a year, have about 3 days of a break from the farm. And they were good to me. They used to take me out places. Yeah. So, that was it. But I sure did not like Walthamstow. Oh, by the way, I got ahead of my story here. I should have said about when the war was on, and this is going back to Ipswich. Anytime my dad, Bill, got on leave, he'd always come home and take me to the Hippodrome, which was just a little piece off Cornhill in Ipswich. And on the way home, we'd always go in to the Crown and Anchor there. He would have his bottle of beer and a couple of biscuits, and I'd have a stone bottle, they were then, of ginger beer. And I'd have a couple of cookies. And, I used to think that was great. I'd be out till 10 o'clock at night. And he took me to different pantomimes, but this one I remember was an outstanding one. It was Cinderella. It was beautiful, and I'll never forget it. I can see the stage there yet when she come along and the glass slipper fit her. Well, that's enough. That's about it for that part. I can't go any more. But as I say, I got on the farm and I got out here to Canada, and I don't know. I'll have to check my notes now to see how I'm doing. We'll hold off for a little while now, eh? Okay. Between Doll and Doris and Sid, they kept in touch with Matt Beach and Irene for a while. And they had 2 girls, and they grew up. They had a farm up there north of Uxbridge. And, this went on till finally I had a good job at Uxbridge when I worked at Medill's. You were up early in the morning and worked till late at night, but by golly, they really fed you, and the work was good, and the people were good. I stayed there till 1936, and then I took off for Kirkfield. I thought I'd start farming with my present wife's brother. But it was a poor year. We never had rain all summer, and it didn't amount to much, so I just put in the summer, and in the fall I went back to the farm, and I went working down on Lake Simcoe at Douglas Point. And it wasn't too long before I realized my sight was terrible. I couldn't see nothing too good. And Sid, he got word of it in Toronto there some way, I don't know how, but he did. And he came out there one Sunday afternoon, and he just got his car. He was 36 years old at the time when he got his first car. And he says, "You're coming back to Toronto with me." So, naturally I went. He had me down to the best optician they had in Eaton's at the time. And they tried very hard to straighten it. I wouldn't, with lenses, glasses, but they did put me through that I had to cover the good eye and use it, and they did come back some. Well, right today, I'm talking now, this is January 2000, that's my best eye. My good eye is dead. It's almost blind. I cannot see a picture or television, anything like that, with my left eye. But my right eye, I see pretty good, and the two of them work pretty good together. I'm working right now with the CNIB, and they are helping me some. I had to give up driving 3 years ago, and at any rate, I got myself a scooter, and I still do all the shopping. I'm in my 90th year, and Kay, my wife, I've never mentioned her before on this tape, but she's 94, and between the two of us we get along pretty good. She's had a few heavy operations, but right now she's doing good, and we're still in our own home, and that's the main thing. Our biggest problem right now is a little transportation to get her out once in a while, so she don't go house crazy. Well, I haven't too much more to say on that part, but however, as I say, I used to go down Seaside once in a while, and you know, after 1936, I got straight around. Of course, finally I met up with a girl. It was pretty bad out there at Duker's Point. There was only 3 girls in the community, and the rest of us was all boys. There was generally lots of girls around the shores of Lake Simcoe. And I said before they came that year, I says, there's one girl that's coming out here, then going back. Well, she did go back, but I did take her out a few times, and she went back to Toronto, and she didn't think I'd ever go to Toronto to see her, but I did. We got married in 1938. I guess it was 1938. I should be talking that this happened. At any rate, we got married on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, or day before New Year's Eve, let's put it that way. However, before, I didn't have very much money to be thinking about getting married, but however, we seemed to pull through it, and my biggest thing was to get a new suit to get married in. And I needed a few other clothes too. And when I was down in Toronto visiting her, we went up there to Sid's place, and I believe they lived on Briar Hill at that time. And he says, now anything you want, he says, you just make a list. Picked it out of Eaton's catalog, of course. And he says, I'll get it for you, and he says, I can get 10% off, which he always did for me. I believe this tape is going to run out by the looks of it, so I'm going to stop right now and turn up. There we go in the back now. Yes, I ordered these set of clothes, and I went down one Sunday night. I was down there, this is before I was married, of course, a week or two, to pick these clothes up. And he was very ill in bed with the flu. And we went up there, Betty and I, and mind you, that suit I ordered was a very good suit, and it was only $25, but it wasn't good enough. He had to get one better. But he bought me clothes there. I came very close to $50, I would say, which I didn't have that kind of money. I had about 30. But however, he says to me, when I was leaving now, he says, if you will accept that as a wedding present, he says, they're all yours. I was quite happy. Good Lord, that kind of money them days was a lot of money. $1 was $1 them days. You could buy something with $1, but not today. It's just something to have in your pocket. So at any rate, I better pause now till I think up something else on my note. However, another time I went down there to Toronto and I stayed a week. This was shortly after 1936. No, I'm wrong. Now, I went down there one time and I stayed a week. I was supposed to go down there for Christmas, which I did. I went down and picked him up from work every night while I was there. I had an old, well, it wasn't that old, but I had a 1925 Maxwell. I don't know whether you ever heard tell of them, but it was a pretty good old car. And it had been used a couple of years. I think I bought that car, if I remember right, for $50 or $65, one or the other. I had a Model T I traded in for it, and I got $15 for the Model T, and I think I gave them $50 difference. But however, I had a good time with that. Well, then I can't account for too much between then. That was in 1931. I'll tell you the time it was when the Maple Leaf Gardens was opened, built and opened that same year. And that was 1931, I believe, when they started, Maple Leaf started to play hockey in there. So, from then on, different things came up. And then the first thing I knew, I was quite surprised. I heard from Sid. Well, that was about the time he came out and looked after me with the eyes. He'd bought this new car, brand new, 36 Chev. And it was quite a car. Boys, I went down and went to Bowmanville with him one Sunday to some people he knew down there. And I'm telling you, he knew it was under 60 miles an hour all the way. And that was pretty fast them days. We used to figure if we had a car do 35 or 40, we had a pretty good one, but he was a good driver. Of course, I guess he took lessons and everything. He has the very best. You can rest assured for that. Well, I'm about to the end of my notes here. I've cut them down some. There's a lot of stuff I had wrote down here that don't amount to very much. And my sight is played out on me. And at any rate, for the last few years, for a while there, we kind of lost track of one another. I didn't see him very often. I guess maybe from about 1938. I guess over the 40s and maybe the 50s. And maybe later than that. I don't remember. But I got married. I lost my first wife, Betty. She died in 1960. Yeah, in 1960. And I still hadn't seen Sid for quite a while. I never ever told him about it or anything. This was in Lindsay here. But Doll and she came out, and I believe Doris brought her out, came out to see me. And Doll came out to the funeral anyway, and she stayed with me a couple of days at the house until the funeral was over. And the next day we went around and got business all straightened up, and then she went back to Toronto. And it was a kind of not a bad winter, but I stayed there by myself where I was living. And in the meantime, I met, although I'd known her for years, I met Kathleen, my wife. Now, this is January, I believe the 25th, yeah. And we're still plugging along. We've had a good marriage. Next year will be 40 years. This year will be 39. We got married on the 1st of July in 1961. And we've struggled along. We've had our ups and downs, but finally we rented for a while, and of course she had a son, Bill. He was just beginning in his teenage years, and he came with us, and till he grew up, and then he got off working on his own. He's doing very well. He lives in Brampton now, but he's climbing up too now. First thing you know, he'll be an old age pensioner. He's 54 right now, I believe. He's a 54, 55, I guess 54. Yeah, he will be 54 come March, I guess. This March coming up, yeah. Well, I'm going to lay off this for a while, and I maybe do some more of the notes, think up some other things that I'll put on this tape that might be interesting, but as of now, I don't have too much to talk about. Because yeah, well, oh yeah, I know what it was. I was going to say, we used to go to Covent Gardens once in a while, especially when folks came over from England. But we went anyway, whether there was folks from England or not. We used to meet down there once or twice a year. And you know, after that a while, it got, I don't know, I guess we got a little bit old and it was a little bit much for us walking around there. So Doris used to bring him out to Manchester, which it really was a little more than halfway for them. But we used to meet there down at Hagen's restaurant. It was a chicken business. You know, they served nothing but chicken when they started up. And it was a big place and a good place, and it's still going. In fact, when I was working in the feed business at Master Feeds, when they started raising these broiler chicks, now this was in the 50s, it made a lot of employment because there was the guy that hatched the chickens, and then there was the guy that raised them and fed them, which was a farmer, and the feed company would supply the feed, and then they had the restaurant for to go there and eat them. And that restaurant has done well. That was a good business, and that was well planned. But I think they were the first to serve what they call chicken in a basket, or barbecue chicken. But in them days they called it chicken in a basket. And it was very nice. Excuse me. In other words, it was something like eating lobster down Prince Edward Island. You were supposed to eat it with your fingers, never mind having a knife and fork. Well, I think this tape is pretty near to the end of it. By the way it's running, it looks as if it might stop any minute. But however, I'll wait and see. And as I say, I'm going to sign off for now. And as I think of a few things later on, I will put them on either this tape or the other tape. Fine now. I hope you like this. I'll say goodbye for now. This is January the 20th right now. It's been a very good winter so far, not too much snow, just enough to make things white, that's all. In fact, we've never had to have our driveway cleaned out this year yet. I think the snowplow has been by the house twice, and everything seems to be running normal. It's kind of raw